Great. Well, hi everybody. My name is Steve Holden. I lead the analytics team here at Fannie Mae for the single family business. And today we're going to talk about financial inclusion. And I have a star-studded panel here. And I'm going to have each of my fellow panelists introduce themselves and maybe give us a quick soundbite around how you think about financial inclusion in these rapidly evolving digital age. Lisa, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Rice. I'm the president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. We're a national civil rights agency and the only civil rights agency solely dedicated to eliminating all forms of discrimination in the housing and financial markets. And financial inclusion means to me that all of the systems in our mainstream sector work properly and accurately and fairly, particularly for marginalized communities.
Thanks for having me. Felipe Millon, I'm with OpenAI, and I lead our government go-to-market business. You asked a little bit about financial inclusion, so maybe to share on a personal level, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I was born in Colombia and moved to Miami when I was 2 years old. And I very vividly remember as a 14, 15-year-old going with my dad to a car dealership to try to negotiate a lease and having to translate documents for him. And so the idea of financial inclusion is very important, especially when it comes to translation and equitable access to be able to understand the important financial documents we're using.
That's a great anecdote. Adrian.
Yeah, my name is Adrian Armas. I'm a chief economist of the Central Bank of Peru since 2005, where I have spent most of my career. The case of Peru is a middle-income country with a very low level of financial inclusion. Because it's also an economy with high informality and citizens, there is a distrust on financial institutions. So this digital revolution is a great opportunity for my country to improve on that regard.
Great. And Leah?
My name is Leah Price. I work for the Federal Housing Finance Agency. We oversee Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the Federal Home Loan Banks. Before that, I worked for a Fintech startup, and I worked here at Fannie Mae. And financial inclusion for me really is about leveling the playing field.
Great, thanks, Leah. Okay, we're going to start with Adrian, if that's okay. So Adrian, let's have an international perspective on this topic. So you mentioned that you're from the Central Reserve Bank of Peru as the chief economist. Tell us about some of the issues that Peruvians face when it comes to financial inclusion and what steps the central bank is taking to address some of those issues.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. There are two actions that are most common among the central bank community, and there is a third one which is unique to the Peruvian case. The two are, one, first is the interoperability regulation to force any institution to be interoperability. That's one. Two, also, the central bank has started to build a retail payment platform like the FedNow here or UP in India, or PIX in Brazil. We are already started with this project. That's common. Now, what is not common is our CBDC pilot. Why? Because, as I mentioned, there is a lot of distrust from people in Peru, but what they do trust is at the Central Bank of Peru. I don't know if you know, but Peru has the lowest inflation rate in Latin America, taking out countries with the dollar as a currency. So there is a trust so our experiment in the central bank is to see, in particular in rural areas, where at least 25% of citizens live there. You can think about the Andes Mountains, on the Amazon rainforest, people living in a very hard places as you could imagine. So our guess is, our experiment is to try with, if with the CBDC, they will start to using digital payment. And then probably other tools as well. The idea is to include these people in the financial system.
And the CBDC is the central bank digital currency?
Yeah, central bank digital, exactly.
Excellent, great. So thanks for that, Adrian. So we'll move on now to Lisa. And Lisa, let's bring a domestic lens to this. I know you've been looking at all sorts of financial systems as you think about your role as president and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. What are you seeing in terms of the systems in the US from an inclusivity and a fairness perspective?
So Steve, what we have found, and we've been working on these issues since our inception almost 40 years ago, what we have found is that the systems and structures in the mainstream market are not working well for marginalized communities. So think automated underwriting systems, credit scoring systems, insurance scoring systems. We now have automated valuation models that perform abysmally in when it comes to assessing the accurate value for properties that are located in predominantly Black and Latino communities and predominantly Native American communities. Tenant screening selection systems. The challenge is that we have had throughout the entire history of the US, right, we've had thousands of race-based laws and policies that have created these systems and structures of inequality. So think about the zoning policies that we put in place 50, 60 years ago to foment residential segregation. Well, we passed the Fair Housing Act, but we left those zoning policies in place. So these systems and structures are still in place. Zoning policies, the dual credit market, our biased appraisal system, racial profiling in the criminal justice system, and so forth and so on. These systems are still in place and they're still doing what they were designed to do. So our job is to both try to eliminate and deconstruct those systems and replace them with systems and structures that are fairer, but simultaneously, we have been doing a lot of work to compel legacy systems to be fairer. And we do that in a number of ways. So we have done a lot of work in compelling insurance scoring systems, for example, to be fairer in the aftermath of a bevy of insurance redlining cases that we brought. We worked with insurance carriers to augment their models to be fairer, and we did that by a number of ways. We changed the data sets. We changed weighting of the different variables. We changed variables in the model. Took a lot of tinkering to do, but we were able to compel those systems to be fairer and more accurate. We've done a lot of work with helping entities to clean up their data sets. We've done a lot of work with entities to help them expand the universe of data that they're using in their models. So for example, using information like rental housing payment information, using bank transaction data and the like to broaden the universe of the data sets, ensure that there's more representation, particularly of marginalized consumers, being represented in the data, being seen in the data. Because if you're not seen in the data, the resulting system is not going to accurately assess you. And then most recently, we have been using we've been researching a process called distribution matching, in which we can compel AI systems, we believe, to be fairer. For underwriting systems, we're seeing a 15% reduction in disparities, and in pricing systems, up to a 20% reduction in disparities.
Wow, that's really impressive. And I can tell you, oftentimes, focusing on the data is where a lot of the issues reside, and so chasing down those data-based issues and resolving them is important to making progress. So that's really, really interesting, Lisa. Thank you. Let's go over to Felipe now. Felipe, you're at OpenAI, and I know that generative AI is sort of the new topic du jour. What opportunities do you see generative AI as a technology can make in terms of addressing issues around inclusivity?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I'm clearly an extreme believer in the power of this technology. To a certain extent, I voted in the most powerful way, which was with my feet. I had a phenomenal career at Amazon and loved the organization, but felt so strongly about the power of this technology that made the jump to OpenAI to be even closer to it. I think, I mentioned at the start, one of the things about financial inclusion in my personal story was, again, growing up as a child with an immigrant family and being able to translate for them. So I do think there is so much power in this democratization of intelligence. And two things I'll point out. That first one is translation. So these generative AI models are incredible at translation, being able to speak translate from one language to another and understand. And so whether it be the real-time voice mode we launched, if you have not played around with it, highly suggest to play around with the voice mode. It is an incredible real-time translator or interpreter. But being able to take an important document, like going back to the example of my father leasing a car, and I can take a English language contract upload that into a tool like ChatGPT or others, and have that translated into Spanish at the appropriate level for me, or what are the important points, or what are the things I need to understand. So that ability to take financial documents and financial literacy and be able to translate that back to someone, not only a translation in terms of language, but also in terms of kind of content and reading level and familiarity, which leads to another way that I think these models are going to be incredibly important, which is the personalization of education. And really this ability to use generative AI to adapt your learning style to the thing that you need to learn at the right level. So if I am a PhD economist talking about an economic topic, I might want to see the content at a different level if I'm trying to learn it. But if I am not a PhD economist and maybe only have an undergraduate experience or only high school level understanding of economics, to be able to have a model adjust kind of content to my level, I think is a very powerful topic. So I do think we're seeing a lot of adoption of generative AI in universities. It's going to be one of the places I think that is most radically impacted in how we teach and how we learn. We have to do it in a right, responsible way where tools like ChatGPT aren't used for cheating and kind of just writing an essay for you, but instead helping you personalize your education, I think is really powerful. So those are the couple of things that I'm really excited about.
That's great. And I think the applications for financial literacy in this country are quite profound. In some of the examples you just gave, I think there's really some impressive opportunities. I did see recently the chat feature, the voice chat feature of OpenAI's tools, and the latency, it's just incredible. You're having a conversation in real time. The responsiveness is extraordinary. So yeah, I see a lot of really interesting applications of that technology.
Not specifically financial inclusion, but one of the things I do, so I'm on the road a lot meeting with different organizations, and sometimes I don't have background about these organizations. So what I do is I turn on voice mode in my car over Bluetooth and have a whole conversation. Hey, tell me about this organization. Tell me about what they do. Tell me about what maybe things related to AI they've done and understanding more about that. So when I go and meet with someone, I'm much more informed about their organizations, their priorities, their history.
Yeah, very cool. Leah, so let's talk about FHFA and the recent generative AI tech sprint that was conducted. I spent 3.5 days at your headquarters. It was a really impressive session. You all enabled a conversation amongst our whole industry, frankly, around this topic of generative AI. Can you share with our audience today that event?
Yeah, so let me tell you about our tech sprint. In general, a tech sprint could be hosted by any kind of organization. So companies hold them, governments hold them. It's kind of like a hackathon. And the way FHFA structures tech sprints, we just had our second annual tech sprint, is we set up a 4-day event where we bring together teams of people from the industry. So this year there were a lot of lenders, there were some big tech companies, there were mortgage tech vendors. We brought together 12 teams, and over the course of 3 days, they came up with ideas. And on the 4th day, they pitched the ideas to a panel of judges, very much like Shark Tank. It's a good show. You can see the show on YouTube. FHFA has a YouTube channel. So just search for Demo Day YouTube, and you'll find it. So we had 12 different ideas that were pitched. And what's really interesting listening to Felipe is that the ideas that came up were really about financial inclusion, very much focused around that. One of them that I was going to mention today was about borrowers with limited English proficiency. So it's fascinating that here we are in the mortgage industry at a federal regulator to hear somebody at OpenAI say that that's what they're most excited about, what this technology can do. It really means that we are pretty much on the same page about what some of the capabilities could be and what some of the benefits are. Another example I want to give of how this industry, and it's not just FHFA thinking about it, it's not Fannie and Freddie, but it's how mortgage lenders are thinking about it, was an idea that would make use of the multimodal capability of AI. This one's really interesting. So Americans with Disabilities Act and properties, in order to ensure that properties are more compliant with ADA, one team proposed an idea where a property owner could take pictures of a room or of an entrance and send it to the model. The model would give some kind of compliance score and then even come up with renderings and new images of what an owner would need to do to the property to make it more compliant. This makes things better for Americans with disabilities. It makes things better for the property owners. There are all kinds of opportunities with this new technology. So we're a regulator, obviously, so we need to be thinking about the risks and what kinds of control measures need to be put in place. So not only did each team at this event need to come up with use cases and benefits, but they also had to talk about the risks. And there are novel risks with this new technology. I'll tell you, every single team mentioned hallucination and accuracy as the #1 risk. And what's great is that at least that's consistent. At least all of the players in the industry, outside of the industry, big tech, other regulators, other countries are thinking about the same types of risks that are out there. So it feels like there is a rising tide and there's a lot of interest, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, I love those examples. And when I think about the limited English proficiency example, for anyone who's been through a mortgage closing and has gone through the myriad of documentations, imagine doing that if English is not your first language. I mean, it's just an extraordinarily complicated and involved process. And I also believe that generative AI can really help provide clarity to the borrower about what's really happening in those transactions. That it is arguably the most important financial transaction that one might engage in their lifetime.
Yeah, and I'll also say what was interesting was that there's a lot of fear around generative AI and the harm that it can cause, but every single team gravitated towards working on this technology for risk management and compliance. And so out in the media, the hype really isn't about, oh, how can this cool technology help risk manage? It's all about how it can cause mass destruction. So I'm excited about that.
Very great.
If I can add one thing, Steve, on that. I mean, I think the point about the fear around AI, I think one of the things I suggest to the audience is to think about this in a very risk-based approach. And so if I take two kind of extreme examples of using generative AI, if I am saying, I'm thinking about a mortgage, here's my mortgage documents, should I sign this paperwork? That's actually probably a risky decision. You should probably have some legal advice. You should probably understand the financial decision. I, as an AI provider, would not advise you to just take whatever comes out of ChatGPT and say, yep, it said I'm okay, let me sign it. However, if I am taking my cafeteria menu as an organization and translating that into other languages, maybe I want to make it more inclusive, and so I want to translate it into Spanish or Portuguese, I'm okay if you take that and you just take this trade output and not double check it and go call up some third party to verify. So understanding a risk-based approach, I think, is the right way to think about using these tools. You as an individual, as your organization, are going to be the right ones to understand the risk of each outcome. And so again, think about that cafeteria menu versus signing a contract, and it's very different. And overall, what I would suggest is, a quote I love to share is, unfortunately, we do not get fit by reading about working out. You have to go to the gym. And so in the AI world, going to the gym is using AI. So use AI, obviously I'm very biased. We have a tool we think is the best. There's others out there. Use something. Again, use it in a risk-based approach. Find those low-risk categories that you are perfectly okay if the AI tools are wrong. But we have to start using it. I think we talk a lot, especially in DC and others, about AI. Generally, there's AI events like this all the time. But I think there's no substitute for using AI and being at the frontier and seeing what this technology can do.
That's sage advice. Okay, we're going to do a lightning round here. We're just going to go down the line. We'll start with Lisa. And so my question for you is, as you look ahead, what are you most worried about? What are you most excited about? And what do we need to be doing to get this right?
Okay, well, I have to give two answers. I'm sorry, based on what Felipe just said. I'm very concerned about unconstrained models. But the answer that I wanted to give is I'm really, really concerned about the dearth of students in the United States who are graduating with STEM degrees. Extremely concerned about it, and believe we have to do a lot more to invest in math and sciences, particularly in our public educational institutions, starting at the kindergarten and pre-kindergarten levels. I'm extremely concerned about this. The number of STEM students graduating is declining.
I'll go to the optimistic side. So one of the things I'm most excited about is the underlying improvement of this generative AI technology. So we released about a month ago, a new series of models we call O1, which are a new reasoning line of models. And really, we think that is very fundamental in a step leap change in what these models will be able to do. And so understand as these models become more intelligent, they can now start doing things of like more agentic like behavior. Again, I still think we need to do it in the right responsible way, but really excited to see what comes from that.
Great. Adrian?
Yeah. Historically, technology has driven the evolution of the financial system, so it's not new on that regard. But what history tells us is that we have to be careful about spillover effects, consequence, and how to keep a sound financial system. But technology is always very, very welcome.
Yeah. And Leah?
I'm not worried, but I am concerned that it's bad actors who will be playing with this technology more aggressively in a way that may not benefit any of us, any of humanity. I'm concerned that they will be ahead of those of us who have good intentions, and that those of us who have good intentions will end up being constrained because there's so much fear about what the bad guys are doing that everyone else gets shut down along with it. Like Felipe, I'm really excited that these models are getting better every single day and that this is a very competitive space and that we could end up living much better lives, have better life expectancy, disease could be cured, so I'm pretty excited.
Steve, how about yourself?
Well, I tend to be an optimist. This is a extremely disruptive technology, and I think there's going to be a lot of change. But I think on net, looking back, there's going to be some amazing opportunities for us as a society to make the world a better place. So that's my closing view on the topic. Thanks, Felipe, for asking. Well, listen, you've been more than generous with your time this morning and really interesting views and perspectives. So thank you to our panelists on our financial inclusion.